Most of our problems have a simple solution, but we're avoiding it because it means taking real responsibility. Welcome to Almost Ready, my honest video journal about self-expression, fear, and figuring shit out in public. I am Jacob, and this is episode number 4. Most solutions to human problems are quite simple, and to quote the author Ryan Holiday, simple but not necessarily easy. But yet, we tend to overcomplicate our solutions. Why do we do that? Before I was starting this whole Almost Ready project, I had many reasons not to start it. I had a problem that I actually wanted to start expressing myself online, but there were so many reasons why I couldn't. I didn't have a good camera, I wasn't good at speaking, I had no topic, and so on. I overcomplicated this problem. And then I just started. Did I get rid of all of those problems on the way? No, I didn't. It wasn't about that I needed to learn to speak and that I needed a new camera and so on to start. There was a quite simple solution. I just needed to start. And I think this describes quite well how we most of the time, if not every time, work through problems. We have two kinds of solutions. The simple, not necessarily easy one, and the complicated one, which gives the responsibility away from us to other people, the environment, the universe, and so on. Take, for example, if you don't feel in shape, if you don't feel fit and healthy, and you're just not happy with your body. Naturally, we blame our health condition because it makes it harder for us to start at all, or we blame society because it sets too high standards. And I don't want to say that's not true. I think body shaming is a big thing in today's society, and I don't think making fun of other people's bodies is in any way acceptable. But I don't think that is the reason why we don't feel well in our bodies. Because take it the other way around. If you would be really fit, have a six-pack and looked totally ripped, and people would make fun of that, maybe would hurt you, but it wouldn't make you feel bad in your own body. You wouldn't suddenly feel unhealthy. Another thing we would say is we don't have enough time or enough money. We have an endless list of solutions that are out of our control. But the most simple solution to this problem would be just start doing something. Just train, eat healthy, and sleep well. And until you haven't tried those basic things, you actually can't blame any other factor. Another example from my own life, also the health stuff was from my life, because until I was 27, I didn't care a bit about my body. I took a lot of drugs, I didn't eat well, and I never trained and didn't take responsibility for my own health. But a more personal example from my own life would be the dependence on my father's opinion. From my childhood to my mid-20s, I was heavily dependent on this man's opinion. A man who would always choose work over me, and who showed me his love by pressure and control. And yes, I believe he loves me, but he never learned to express it in another way because his parents did it the same to him. And okay, I wouldn't blame my teenage version because I had other things in mind at this time and other stuff to worry about, and not the capacity to heal my childhood wounds and the relationship to my parents. But when I was in the beginning of my 20s, I was definitely aware of this dynamic between my father and me. And still I stayed in this situation. Why? Because of fear. Because my father was supporting me with money at this time, and I was too afraid to let go of that. I was too afraid to stand on my own legs and get a job to afford my own place and so on. So I took his money, and with that I sold my independence. And because I couldn't admit that at that time, I was looking for the complicated solution of the problem. And that was blaming him for this whole thing. And yes, he was the reason why it all started, but he wasn't the reason why I still was in it. But I was still thinking, man, if he just would change, everything would be better. If he would change, our relationship would be so good, and so on and so on. And you know what happened? Nothing. The dynamic stayed exactly the same until he stopped giving me money after my bachelor's degree. But this was his decision, not mine. And suddenly, I wasn't dependent on this man anymore. And what happened was that we had less contact and we didn't spoke so often anymore. And over time, our relationship changed and it became better. I wouldn't say it became totally heartwarming and full of love, but at least I think we're now at a point where I don't care about his opinion so much anymore, and he don't try to force it upon. The solution to this problem was always there, and it was always simple. It was me taking action. It was simple, but not easy. Not easy emotionally to take the consequences of this decision. And that's what I want to say. I think we all have a deep feeling and intuition in us that tells us what's actually the simple solution, even if it's hard for us. And this voice also tells us that we're actually bullshitting ourselves by searching the overcomplicated solution. We just need to learn to listen to this little voice and then act brave, or at least be honest to ourselves and say to ourselves, I am taking the complicated solution because it is just easier in the moment. Now I would love to hear from you if you have some of those situations in your own life where you actually already know that you're taking the overcomplicated solution instead of the simple and actionable solution because it just feels more comfortable. I would love to hear this in the comments. And with that, I leave you today. I wish you an amazing day and see you next time. Peace.